Welcome to Tech Notice. So people say that this guy over here is the best editing NAS in the world. So I've been using this for 3 months and here is my good and bad experience. There were some issues that I actually figured out how to solve, and this device has got better since I've been using it. You don't believe it? Well, QNAP released a feature that gets you 2 times the speed of the NAS. That's quite incredible. So let's take a look at the 3-month experience with this QNAP Thunderbolt 4 NAS. This video has been brought to you by Samsung and their NVMe SSDs. The 990 Pro is one of the best NVMEs we have tested on the channel. Have a look at any of the recent SSD reviews and you'll see for yourself. And if you want to know how to use these guys on your Mac, then I'll leave the video down in the description below. So quickly about how we have been using this. We've been using this at least 8 hours a day. It's been on 3 months straight, and we've just pegged it with everything we can. So that means we've got at least one of these, like this main PC here is connected to the NAS with Thunderbolt 4. We're editing videos on it 5 days a week, at least 8 hours a day, sometimes rendering overnight and so on. Plus there's other devices and clients connected to it as well, where I'm going to be ingesting footage or editing or reviewing edits or something like that. So it's been quite heavy. The biggest thing is the workflow change. And even if you haven't got a NAS yet or a flash NAS and perhaps you have multiple video editors, this has absolutely changed our workflow. I mean, I never have to interrupt the editor here editing saying, sorry, can I just ingest some footage? Or can I just get some of the files in there? Can you just put some of these files here so I can look through the footage? We can constantly edit and ingest stuff from one storage location, absolutely no issues at all. And honestly, if I would have known about this earlier, how much this changed, I probably would have changed or, implemented this a bit earlier. But that being said, you don't have to get this QNAP NAS because this one is probably a bit too expensive and too high spec, because it offers stuff that most likely you don't need if you just want an editing space for 2 video editors, for example, or 3 or more, something like that. Secondly, the performance of this is out of this world. Now, we used to edit on internal Gen 4 NVMe SSDs, the Western Digital SN850Xs, 4TB drives. We had 2 of them in there, and then that was fast, or at least I thought it was fast. Now, this external Thunderbolt NAS, I can't see any difference to what we had internally compared to this one. In fact, sometimes I think it's a little bit better because I can put a little bit more of the assets into one place and I don't have to pull some of these project files over like a slower NAS. So I have the space and speed of this one unified storage space. So the speeds, what we have experienced is exactly the same as on internal things. Now, I'm not saying that I can't saturate fully the Thunderbolt 4 connection. I definitely can when I'm ingesting footage on it. When editing video, I don't notice any difference in video editing performance, whether internal or that Thunderbolt NAS. Next, the I/O is amazing. It's got 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, 10 gigabit Ethernet port as well. So the devices that are close by can be connected over Thunderbolt to get the faster speeds, and devices that are further away or in the network when you don't have enough Thunderbolt ports, through our network 10 gigabit switch that's somewhere up there, we can get multiple devices connected to it and get the speeds, which is amazing. I've been actually using the front panel USB Type A port quite a bit as well. So sometimes I'm connected to this NAS with a PC that has 2.5 gigabit connection, which very easily saturates when you're trying to ingest files to that one, especially, with Blackmagic cameras, the larger files. Then what I've done is I've got one of these SD card readers, plugged it into over there, and then I'm getting really fast transfer speeds, and the 2.5 gigabit connection is not bad because the 2.5 gig is saturated, but then the extra USB port in the front, up to 10 gigabits in speed, allows me to have extra bandwidth to ingest footage onto the NAS. Then there is the Thunderbolt over Ethernet feature. So basically, if you've got the NAS also connected to a network that has internet on it as well, like our 10 gigabit goes into our network here that also has internet there, in theory and in practice, you can actually get internet over the Thunderbolt 4 cable as well. So one cable connects to our PC here, and we can get the internet. That means that we get all the rest of the network in here as well. So I can access all the other NASs and internet with just one cable as well, even if our PC doesn't have 10 gigabit Ethernet, for example. Remember the Fractal Terra build where there's only 2.5 gigabit LAN connection, but now through the Thunderbolt over Ethernet, we can actually access all the rest of the stuff as well, and less cable clutter, which is pretty cool. Now, in my experience, the Thunderbolt over Ethernet is not as stable as actually having a dedicated 10 gigabit Ethernet port, for example, and the speeds are kind of temperamental, but it's nice to know that this feature is possible there. And the best good side is that since releasing this, QNAP has actually released a new feature, and I've got to give a little shout out to Robbie from NAS Compares, who actually mentioned this as well. We've been chatting, and when he was in Computex in Taiwan, he was seeing this in QNAP booth where they connected two of the Thunderbolt ports from the NAS to one PC, like a laptop, MacBook Air, for example, and then you get double the speed of your Thunderbolt 4. So when you're getting between 1.6 to 2 gigabyte speeds, now you can get 3+ gigabytes per second transfer speeds to the NAS. So let's say you don't have two separate clients, but you just want one device to be super fast to the NAS. You can utilize both of the Thunderbolt 4 ports and get really fast speeds, which is absolutely insane. Now, in our case, we haven't been able to test it because we usually need two separate clients, and I don't necessarily need like one PC to be super fast, 3 gigabytes per second. But it's nice to know that, let's say you're editing in a hotel room or whatever on a MacBook, and then you connect two of these onto there, you get super fast transfer speeds, even if you're ingesting or downloading footage from the NAS. It's a really nice feature to have. It's called SMB multi-channel over Thunderbolt. Okay, now the bad sides. Some of them are big things, some of them are small things. One of the small things is that it makes a really annoying beep sound when devices are connected or disconnected from the NAS. Let me show you this. So this MacBook I just disconnected. Now listen to this in the background. In a minute, you're gonna hear a very loud beep. There we go. That just told us that, okay, your device has been disconnected. But what's annoying is even if you turn your PC on or turn your PC off or restart your PC that's connected to the NAS, it's gonna make the same noise every single time it's disconnected, which is very annoying when I have to film things just next to it. Second thing is Thunderbolt cables. Now, if you haven't bought or experienced Thunderbolt 4 cables before, they're very expensive and limited in length. I think they can go up to 3 meters in length, and this one, what I have here, is the longest one, and they're super expensive. Now, don't cheap out on the Thunderbolt 4 cables, because that is one of the worst things you can do if you have, I don't know, some randomly not certified Thunderbolt 4 cable that actually doesn't give you the speeds. But a 3-meter cable can cost you between $70 to $100, or even more if you go with some of the very expensive ones. Now, I'll leave the ones that I found in the description below, because I always like to get the best bang for buck. If you want to get it, I'll leave some down below if you want to pick some up. Then the fan issue. Now, there is some kind of a thing with this NAS that whenever it gets hot, the fans ramp up, which is normal. But the problem is it doesn't ramp them down. In my experience, I think it's got a little bit better with the latest updates, but it ramps up very nicely when your CPU or the NVMe's inside get hot. It's nice, but it doesn't fan it down very well. So what we have to do is just turn the NAS off, and next time we turn it back on, suddenly it's quiet, even if you restart it instantly. So there's some kind of the fan curve software issue. Maybe QNAP has fixed it till now, but I'm recording this on 21st of June 2024. The QNAP is rather loud, but I found a fix how to fix it. Now, if you're just gonna plug the NVMe's in and start using it, you're gonna start to experience this being very loud and start sounding like a hairdryer, because it's just pulling air through the device to cool the NVMe's down. And QNAP says that you don't actually need a cooling for this, which in theory probably is right, because the fans can keep up with it, but it's unbearable to use. So I spoke to QNAP, and QNAP said, why don't we send you these little SSD heat sinks, and then, you know, they should be fine. And I was like, cool. Then this box arrives, that's the smallest box in the world, this one here. And inside the box are the tiniest heat sinks, like 10 times 10 millimeter little squares. And I was saying, is this a wrong heat sink? Basically, these heat sinks are meant to go on the SSD controller, because the NAND can run a little bit warmer, but the controller is the one that you want to keep cool down because that's not very good. So I tried that. I put all the heat sinks on all of the SSDs, plugged them back in, and no difference, like whatsoever. Maybe slight difference, but I thought, oh, what can I do? And I tried to buy some heat sinks online. The ones that I bought, they didn't fit in there, and I thought, oh, what else do I have to fix the issue? Then I had some thermal pads. I had 1.5mm Arctic thermal pads. I cut a big slice of 1.5mm thermal pad onto the SSDs and put the little heatsink for the controller on top of the thermal pad, which just fits inside the enclosure, and it actually touches the ceiling of the enclosure, the top heatsink. And now whenever I'm touching the top of the device, it's actually warm, which I think is kind of a good thing because I'm utilizing the chassis, the metal chassis, to actually extract heat out of it, where previously we were just pulling it through, but now we can actually put some of the heat onto the chassis. That actually fixed the issue. Now it's completely quiet, so if you want to fix it for cheap, just put some thermal pads on the top and find some very cheap, some kind of heat sinks that are very, very shallow. I'll try to find some, leave some in the description below, and then it's actually going to work. So that worked. Even though I don't have anything underneath I do have still chips on the KC3000 because it's double-sided NVMe, but that fixed the issue. Now here, I'd like to make a little comment about like the design of this for QNAP as well. Now, because the chassis of this is aluminium, some kind of metal, we could utilize the chassis cooling and make the chassis to be a big heatsink. Now, it would be awesome, let's say, if the chassis kind of clipped over or had like a bonnet, and then you have the SSDs on there, and then you put the heatsink down, and then the whole chassis becomes the heatsink. Suddenly, we have very good, option for this to cool down onto the chassis and, dissipate heat, and I won't have to run the fans that warm, and perhaps we don't even need extra heat sinks, just a big thick thermal pad that makes contact with the chassis. That would be a really cool design. And the last bad thing is it's rather expensive if you want to get it. It's one of the only hot swappable flash NVMe NASs out there, and for that reason it's expensive because it does support the E1.S SSDs, and the actual like tray where you put your NVMe in the M.2 is actually E1.S a tray as well, and that makes it very expensive, meaning you can just pull one of these up even without turning the NAS off, put a new SSD in, and it's going to build the RAID again. You're not going to lose any data. It's hot swappable. For me, and I think for most people, it's a little bit of a feature that is too much of a server feature, and I think the prosumers who are going to use it probably don't need it. I mean, let me know if I'm completely wrong with this, but I think that feature makes it very expensive. We could actually pull down a little bit of the feature to make it a little bit more affordable. I think around $1,000 for this one would be a good price point for the hardware and specs we're going to get. But then, conclusion overall, even though with some of the issues and bad sides, I figured out a way how to fix it, and why I am so, oh my goodness, how happy I am about this. This is truly amazing. I've changed everything, the way we're doing it. In a minute, we're gonna move, and I might show you how we've set this up in there as well. But this truly unlocks multi-client workflow and redundancy. Well, yeah, redundancy. I'll leave the link in the description below if you want to check this out, as well as some build guides for creative PCs. If you want to have a creative PC, you've never built one before, don't know what to do, this build guide is completely free down there for you to check out. Thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.